Hospitals are often depicted as places of healing and recovery, but they can also be eerie, especially during the night shift. The silence, the dim lights, and the occasional distant sound of a monitor beeping can create an atmosphere that feels almost otherworldly. Hospitals can be eerie places, but one night stands out above the rest. It was a night that would forever be etched in my memory. A night where the line between life and death seemed to blur. Let me take you back to that night. I was caring for two elderly patients, one in room 304 and the other in 305. Both were at the end of their lives, but their conditions were starkly different. The man in 305 had been nonverbal for as long as anyone could remember, while the woman in 304 was fully alert, aware of her impending fate. Now, if it weren't for the wall separating them, their headboards would practically touch. It was almost as if their lives were intertwined by the thin barrier that separated their rooms. The proximity of their beds made it feel like they were sharing their final moments together, even though they were complete strangers. The man in 305 was completely nonverbal. He had been in this state for months, maybe even years. His eyes were always open, staring blankly at the ceiling, as if he was lost in a world that only he could see. No response to anything, his eyes just fixed and staring. It was as if he was trapped in his own body, unable to communicate or connect with the world around him. Mentally, he wasn't there at all. It was heartbreaking to see someone so disconnected from reality, living in a perpetual state of limbo. Meanwhile, the lady in 304 was fully alert, there just to live out her final days. She was aware of her condition and had come to terms with it. She often spoke about her life, her family, and her regrets. It was clear that she was at peace with her fate, but that didn't make it any easier to watch her suffer. Suddenly, she started struggling to breathe, panicking, begging for help, yet refusing any life-saving measures. It was a heart-wrenching sight. She had made it clear that she didn't want any extraordinary measures taken to prolong her life, but in that moment of panic, it was hard to stand by and do nothing. I turned up her oxygen, called the doctor, and did everything to make her comfortable. It was all I could do to ease her suffering in her final moments. The doctor arrived quickly, and we worked together to ensure she was as comfortable as possible. Then, my nurse tech rushed in, wide-eyed, and said, "You have got to go see room 305. The urgency in her voice was unmistakable. I had never seen her so shaken before, and it sent a chill down my spine. I left my patient in 304 with another nurse and headed to 305. My heart was pounding as I walked down the dimly lit hallway, wondering what could have possibly happened to the man who had been nonverbal for so long. Before I even stepped in, I heard him. He was singing. The sound was surreal, almost otherworldly. It was a voice I had never heard before, and it was coming from a man who had been silent for so long. Loud, shaky, but beautiful tenor, singing about meeting God and going home. The lyrics were hauntingly beautiful, filled with a sense of peace and acceptance. It was as if he was serenading his own departure from this world. I called his name, shook his arm, no response. It was as if he was in a trance, completely unaware of my presence. He just kept singing, eyes staring into the void. The vacant look in his eyes was unsettling, but the song he sang was filled with such emotion that it brought tears to my eyes. After a few moments, I returned to my dying patient. I couldn't stay away for long, knowing that she needed me in her final moments. She took her last breath about 30 minutes later. It was a peaceful passing, and I was grateful to have been there to comfort her. When I checked on 305, silence greeted me. The room was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the singing I had heard earlier. He was back to staring into nothingness, never to sing again. It was as if the song had been his final farewell, a brief moment of clarity before returning to his silent world. It was hauntingly beautiful, but still freaks me out. The memory of that night lingers with me, a reminder of the thin veil that separates life and death. Some nights, it feels like the border between our world and the next is thinner than we think. The experiences of that night have made me more aware of the mysteries that surround us and the moments that defy explanation. It's a reminder that in the quiet, dimly lit corridors of a hospital, anything is possible.